Hi, Gordon.
Lots of highs.
I know.
I know,
Hi,
I know.
Renee.
It's like you want to just
I know.
reach out and
Hi,
talk.
Rod. I'm trying to catch up as quickly as I can to see all these faces and names. Hi, Tracy.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So nice to see everybody's face. We are having lots of people trickle in, so we're just gonna fill this space by presenting you with a virtual brunch menu. Jennifer, if that poll's not already up, can we go and serve our guests a pretend brunch menu?
Don't see it yet.
No? Oh, well.
I'm gonna eat a real brunch.
Not
Maybe
really
Jeff can put it up.
anyway, so.
Oh, there it is.
There it is.
Oh. Can I have two choices?
Yeah, I was supposed to say, do we have to pick one?
Can we do one of each?
Absolutely.
Do them all.
All right. Well, as you guys are ordering, I'm going to go through some quick housekeeping notes. My name is Leighton Rasco. I'm going to be the moderator today. We also have a virtual bouncer today. Her name is Jennifer Rasco Smith. A virtual bouncer is a concept that we like to promote on these kind of calls because there's some confusion in the terminology between moderator and someone who actually pays attention to the chat. You know, I'm going to try to keep the conversation going, and Jennifer is going to try to mute anybody who's clacking on their keyboard or trying to, I don't know what you do. I don't know what Zoom bombers do. Why do they even do that? This is a Ask Me Anything style webinar, which means we didn't prepare content. We're relying on you guys to ask us questions, and the two ways you can do that is through the chat feature. And the second way, which is also very fun, is to go to the reactions tab down at the bottom right, raise your hand, and then you can actually use your voice to ask questions, which is fun. I don't know if you guys have done that in the past, or if you only type questions. Please keep yourself on mute when you're not talking. And if you could change your name to your full name by going to the little three dots over your screen and renaming yourself, that would be helpful as well. We are Attendee Management. We are hosting this virtual brunch for actual, wait, that's not right. Virtual brunch with actual nerds. We are an event registration company. We do virtual meeting assistance, custom software, event websites, on-site badging, which we're not doing too much of these days, but it was a lot of fun when we were doing it. Mobile apps, which are surprisingly still relevant in virtual conferences, Unconsult, and all those things. So, we still have people rolling in by the dozens, or at least some. So I'm going to start by introducing our special guest, Cindy Lowe, by telling you guys a little story about the first time I ever met Cindy Lowe.
Oh, gosh.
This was probably 13 years ago. I was brand new to the meetings industry. I'd come from some lame engineering job. I didn't know much about social media or anything. And Cindy Lowe was the first person I ever actually saw use Twitter in the wild. We were at an NPI event, and we were talking about some random topic about, it's probably a CVB getting remodeled or something. And she's like, "No way, my Twitter would be blown up right now if that was actually happening." And she like pulls out her BlackBerry and you know, got on Twitter, and I was like, whoa, She's so cool.
She still is.
Yeah. So now that I've embarrassed her, I'm going to let her introduce herself properly and tell us a little something about herself and Red Velvet events.
So good morning, everyone. Thank you again to Leighton, Rasco, and Jeff, and also the entire attendee management team for having me today. And also, if you don't follow me on social media, I have to give them a shout out. So they actually had, I'm assuming it was a favor, a delivery person to deliver this Starbucks to my house. And what a nice touch, guys, because I was prepared to make a mimosa, but I like this even more because I haven't had a Starbucks in 7 weeks. So this is amazing. It tastes so like I didn't realize how much I missed my caramel macchiato drink until I had my first sip. So for those that don't know me, I am the owner and CEO of a company called Red Velvet Events. Prior to starting it 17 and a half years ago, I was actually in high tech. I used to program manage, though, not actually run events for that company. I took a lot of what I learned from that area and also my coding background and created Red Velvet Events. And I'm honored to be invited as a guest, as a nerd, because as I was telling Jeff last night on Twitter, is that I grew up as a nerd, but I never thought it would be to my advantage now. So thank you for inviting me.
Well, I was just thinking back, Cindy, because we really started our businesses about the same time, like about 20 years ago, and we were both really involved in MPI on boards and committees, and that's where we really started working together and got to know each other. I remember going over to your house to have a little 2-person committee meeting. And then remember the high-tech happy hours?
Yes, because at that time it was to understand how to use the iPhone, guys, because the iPhone was so new. None of us understood how to use the apps. And we were doing these high-tech happy hours to kind of get to know how to use your iPhone or your smartphone better, more efficiently for meetings and events.
And someday we'll laugh about it and be like, remember when we didn't know anything about virtual events?
So, that's a good segue, Christina, because I don't know who said this to me last week, but if you can recall when you first got your first email, how it was the wild, wild west. Everyone was using it to forward stuff, to create spam, create these chain letters, like things that you used to do in regular snail mail. Well, I feel like that's where we are right now with the virtual events, is because all of a sudden we've all been sheltered in place, and we've been all thrown into the same melting pot. And so we're all trying to figure it out. But the good news is it's not too late to learn, because I do think we're going to be in this spot for a little bit longer, and we have to accept it. And so that's where, the sooner we can accept it and move in. Now, I don't think it's going to replace live events. It's just that I think it's going to, it's going to be, there's the poll results. It's going to get us through this slow time right now. So it looks like Eggs Benedict won over breakfast tacos, which I'm shocked. Are we not from Austin or Texas?
I
No,
personally
we're not.
love anything Benedict.
Some of us are not.
Oh, that's awesome. Hi, Rod. How are you?
Real quick, let's introduce the rest of our panel today. We've got Jill, Jeff, and Christina, all last name Rasco. Christina, go.
Hi, I'm Christina Rasco. I'm President and Chief Creative Officer here at Attendee Management. My nerdy superpower is probably taking software, mostly in my job registration platform type software, but software in general, learning it and then figuring out creative ways to use it that is unlike what the original intent is. So I would say that's my nerdy superpower. I also am kind of a political nerd in my non-work.
You are a nerd of all kinds.
Yes, exactly.
Don't sell yourself short.
Oh, thanks, Slade.
Jill Rasco.
Hi there. Good morning. I am Jill Rasco. My nerdy superpower probably dates back to the late 70s when I introduced word processing to Houston, Texas. No one had ever heard of word processing. And then my other superpower is very similar to Christina's. I love to get into the software and figure out how to make it do stuff that I want it to do, even though they tell me it can't be done. So I prefer that kind of challenge, and I'm certified in 3 major platforms and get them confused all the time.
Thanks, Jill. Jeff.
Hey, everybody. So I'm Jeff Rasco, and I am the CEO and founder of Attendee Management. And it is fabulous to see so many, good friends and clients and people from all over, which I consider not my nerdy superpower, but one of the things that I've always enjoyed most is just bringing people together with like interests. And so I think that really applies here. I guess if I had a nerdy superpower, it would be looking at technology that's coming down the pike that may, or just like you see it somewhere and it doesn't really register, and then going, hold it, how does that apply to meetings and events? And then starting to talk about it. So that's how Cindy is another good example of exactly how that's done. It's just like, oh yeah, this Twitter thing that they launched at Southwest, South by Southwest, that could be something that we all do. So it's kind of fun to look at. But we have some real nerds on this call. So I mean, true technologists. So I'm a pretender to the throne.
Well, thanks, Jeff. My nerdy superpower must be tying sweaters around my shoulders. If I had a pocket, I would protect it too. So let's get this kicked off here. We spent long enough talking about ourselves. Let's feature our special guest, Cindy Lowe. The first question that rolled in on the group chat is, Cindy, what are some ways to keep your business going? From Tracy Smith.
Yep. Thanks, Tracy, for asking this question. So if you do follow us on social media, we actually launched something new yesterday, because once I realized all of our fall programs were starting to dwindle off. So let me kind of give you an example of what happened timeline-wise, just so that you can kind of see where my thought process was. So we are very heavily involved with South by Southwest. We've been very involved for all 17 years of our business. And this year, no different. We had a lot of activations happening. On March 6th, when Mayor Adler canceled South by Southwest, we actually already started seeing some of our clients, corporate clients, cancel their programs starting as early as March 1st, because they were already getting worried about COVID and worrying about traveling. And since we work with corporate brands, they didn't want the negative PR, of coming to an event and then possibly making it worse, since they had heard that there was a possibility of South by canceling. So we actually started getting cancellations prior to March 6th. Well, then once March 6th happened, then we got a bunch more cancellations, of course, because since the event's gone. And then the next week, March 12th, basically, we started getting cancellations for our May and April programs, because they were like, if South by can't handle it, then why should we be coming? And we tried to slow it down. We tried to talk it through with them to postpone, to reschedule. Some did push to the fall, but for the most part, some did not. And so we were honestly spending the first 3 weeks of our shelter in place just dealing with cancellations. So it took us 3 weeks to close out everything. And then we realized what was happening is that we started to, recognize that this may be a little longer term. So I thought, okay, I think we're going to be shut down until August. So during that time frame, I told the team, half the team that was dealing with cancellations, the other half of the team I'm sorry, my dog is in my room, and this is a perfect, I am live.
All part of the joys of virtual.
Yeah, I was going to commit the cardinal sin of hosting a virtual meeting and do it outside, where who knows what could happen. And then
what's funny is I locked him up, but somehow he came back in. So I locked him up. So someone in the house clearly missed my memo that I said, guys, don't forget I'm on a live webinar today from 11 to noon. And so somehow he's back in the room. So hopefully he doesn't bark. So then what happened is when I started getting when our team started getting the cancellations beyond summer, I immediately did put on my thinking cap and say, what do we need to do to keep our team intact? And so we are a team of 25 people, and we have a mix of creatives. We have a mix of obviously program managers that plan meetings, registration, that kind of stuff. And then we also have a team that supports. And we sat down together and we would brainstorm, and we're like, what can we sell that still practices social distancing, helps our clients? And so a part of the team is all about learning virtual events. We actually did our first one a couple of weeks ago. We have a very big one next week. And to be honest, we never had done a virtual event prior to March. We had always pitched, but clients would find excuses of, hey, that's too expensive, it doesn't make sense. Maybe we would, stream in a speaker if they missed their flight, or maybe a flight got canceled. But we never went to the extreme of, we're going to do a live webinar. There's going to be a couple thousand people online doing it that way. So we have been learning a little bit trial by fire. And I will say it has made our team very uncomfortable, because we are not in that space. But I told them we have to accept that this is going to be our new reality for at least the next few months. And then on top of that, when we do get out of this, I think the hybrid is going to be very much frequently asked. So what I'll do in a little bit is I'm going to share a link in the chat room so y'all can have access to my matrix. I've literally been adding to this Google Drive file all the different platforms that we have been looking into, experimenting with, just understanding what is out there, because there are so many that call themselves virtual meeting hosts, but not all of them are created the same. And you also have to recognize, as a meeting planner, if you're the one that's being tasked to do it, some of them are very easy to do, and some of them require a CS major. So I would be very careful in over promising what you can deliver in time. But if you go to our website, you will see that we basically have a set of new services that are consulting based, and they actually don't even necessarily have to do with events. Right now, we're just trying to help our fellow companies, clients with marketing, social media, anything that we felt like we had the services naturally in our team, and we're repurposing our team members. But if you are in-house, again, as a meeting planner, I would suggest that you try to step up and speak with your executives to talk about the future of meetings. Because if you can plant it in their head now to kind of talk about how that will look, because there is some cost factors that have to be, managed. And also please don't just put a webinar on and think that's the same as a virtual event, because it's not. You have to really honestly put like a TV producer's hat on. How am I going to produce this to keep them engaged? Because they have been sitting at home and they're probably on 8 different Zoom calls a day, and you have to keep them engaged longer than 30 minutes or even 5 minutes, really. So what are you going to do to entertain them? So that's my long-winded answer, Tracy. I hope that answered your questions. But just so you can kind of see the level range of services that we are selling. We're selling everything from a free 15-minute pep talk. If you just need to be lifted up, your spirits to be lifted up, you drop us a line and we will schedule that 15 minutes. It's free of charge, and we're going to be your cheerleader for those 15 minutes. All the way to actual social media consulting, career consulting, reviewing your resume, helping you with your virtual events if you need to help lay it out and understand what it would look like, all the way to t-shirts. We decided to go ahead and sell t-shirts too, because we thought, who doesn't need a new t-shirt to commemorate COVID-19? So that's what we're doing.
I don't know if I need that t-shirt, but I do. I applaud you.
You may second guess it. There's some that we made them unisex. One is definitely.
No, oh yeah, I'll take one. Go ahead and mark it down. So that brings up one of the questions submitted from Jane Space. She says, what considerations, AV software, space limitations for introducing hybrid meetings when we get back to this transitional period of, not everybody's going to want to attend meetings right away.
So I was on a call yesterday with a bunch of GM hoteliers, and they said that they have been in the process for the last 2 weeks trying to define what those rules are, because even as hotels, they're trying to make sure that they're all on the same page. So similar to, whoever created, hey, a 60-inch round, you should have 8 to 10 people. They're trying to create some of those rules so that they're all practicing the same, best practices. And so unfortunately right now that is still in flux, but I will say that we all need to get used to it, because I do think in order for us to get back to meeting in person again soon, is we have to get people to feel comfortable and safe. because I don't think the answer is, hey, we have to wait till a vaccine, because let's be honest, a vaccine could take anywhere all the way to 2021. And who wants to be sitting there jobless that long? No one. So I think it's better for us to accept the fact that we need to figure out how do we get our attendees to feel safe again to meet. And they might be smaller, more regional meetings, but at least we're showing by example, because as soon as people start feeling comfortable again to getting to that, it will grow over time, you know, and we'll get it back up to the convention center sizes.
I heard something, speaking of, you know, timeline on vaccines, trivia question, the shortest time for a vaccine to have been developed.
Oh, what?
Here's
Do you
the
know
trivia.
the answer? I don't know the answer.
4 years. It was months.
Oh,
And it
oh
took
no!
4
I
years.
hope it's not going to take us 4 years.
We've got a little bit. We have
We're
a little
gonna need more
bit better
t-shirts for
technology. Okay, all the nerds come together and let's come up with a plan.
I will say, as a company, so we are investing in. We're either partnering with companies that are going to own those thermal cameras, you know, to tell your temperature, or we're investing in also the handheld ones that don't touch the skin, because we know we need to do our part to making sure that people again feel like they're coming in and that we've screened them. So I know there's been a lot of debate on whether or not this is privacy, you know, but if we're going to have a meeting, let's say I'm trying to have a meeting of just even 50 people, I want them to feel like we did do our best to protect those 50 people in the room, plus the staff that's going to be at the hotel or wherever we're meeting. And so we now own some hand sanitation, like the ones that squirt out the Perel where you don't have to touch it. We actually technically own those because of South by, because we thought, again, we were going to do South by events and we could see that COVID was picking up. So we bought a bunch of these for our events, because we were going to make everyone wash hand sanitize their hands before they came in. And now we've added to our inventory thermometers. So, and again, this is doable for smaller meetings, but for the big ones, we've reached out to a few companies to ask them for quotes, so we already have them ready, so that we can handle more of the masses once we get to that size.
So that's actually something I haven't heard. You're going to actually have like thermo cameras, just this mass screen people?
Yeah. Well, again, if we can get back to because my goal is I'm hoping we can get back to the convention center size of events. I don't think it'll be 2020, unfortunately. I think it's 2021. But I want people to feel comfortable again coming into the space, knowing that the person next to them doesn't have a low-grade fever. Which again, that's why I said it's a little bit controversial, because some people are saying I could be taking a medicine that could cause that fever and I'm not really sick. But I think the story that we're trying to say is that even if you have any slight sniffle or whatnot, just stay home, because that's why we're going to have the hybrid. You can log in that way. As much as we want you there, but we need to make sure that we're keeping also the people there from spreading germs. Oh, and I see that Hallie from ACL Live, says they're sourcing mass thermo equipment too. So I think I draw the equivalent to, when we started having the clear bags and the metal detectors. I think of it as the same way. It's to protect our people. People need to feel safe to come in, and so we're just going to have to accept that it's new normal. What's interesting is several years ago, I go to Asia probably every 2 years to visit family, to have fun, and it was 2013. It was my first time to see a mass thermal screening, and I didn't know how they pulled my husband aside. So my husband, he thought he was just tired. And we were going through the terminal, is at the airport, and they pulled him aside. They go, "Sir, come here." And he was like, "What?" And they scanned him further, and they go, "Oh, you have a fever. Did you know that?" And he goes, "Oh, that explains why I'm feeling so tired." And the reason why they had installed these was because of SARS. And again, I didn't realize that they had done these at all the airports, because previously in the past, we've always passed through fine. But at that one stop point, my husband did have a low-grade fever. And so then they immediately pulled him aside. They were like, "Where did you come from? Where are you going to?" And what's funny is, because we were only connecting like to another flight, they let us through. But if we had said we were going to stay in that country, they were going to quarantine us. So they were like, they didn't care that we were going to infect the next airplane, but they didn't care that we were going to infect their country. So I thought that was a little ironic. So
yeah, get out of here. We don't. If you're leaving, you're fine. We've had a couple questions rolling that I think we can kind of bundle into one. One question is, how do you engage people other than polls on a virtual meeting? if you open the participants tab, it's down at the bottom. It'll open and you'll see a yes, no. And this is kind of like we're going to ask, raise your hand if whatever, then yes. If you don't raise your hand, hit no. So the other question that we've been getting a lot on the chat is, how do you price a virtual meeting?
Oh, this one's tough. I'm going to be honest.
So that's why we do a series of yes, no questions. Yes or no, virtual meetings should be less than an in-person meeting. Caveat, you're offering CE credit.
There's not a maybe.
Or depends. Or I wish we had it. It depends.
It needs to be on here.
Is there, besides the host, can we see a summary? I mean, I know I can scroll down and quickly kind of get a pulse, but is there a summary way to show that, like, what percentage of people said yes, no?
I don't think there is. This is like
you gotta get your scroller going.
Now I'm
this
curious.
Is like a
there are several people that have raised their hands, so I think they want to speak up. Is that true?
I'm showing 20 yeses and 3 nos.
Okay.
So
and
overwhelmingly,
Hallie
yes,
has her hand raised.
Yeah.
Hi guys, I'm Hallie Williams. I'm a senior producer at ACL Live. I worked for Kennedy for a bit with Miss Kristen Meehan, who's also on the call, and then moved over to ACL Live about 3 years ago. I just wanted to ask, the majority of folks on this call, are you planning nonprofit events as well, or just kind of corporate or offsite receptions, things like that? And reason being is, somebody asked what's a good way to keep folks engaged on virtual event. We have actually witnessed a couple of live auctions happening on a virtual call, which has worked very well. Granted, the last one we watched was with, Matthew McConaughey himself, auctioneer, and kind of, if anybody watched that, it was very engaging. They raised a great deal of money. So you'll have to come up with something to keep folks engaged. But what they saw is that by transitioning from live to virtual, they were able to get a few musicians who had previously turned them down for like a full show to just kind of perform one song on their cell phone live from their garage. Yeah. So that's kind of some of the ideas that we've been seeing. I think that would also work for a corporate setup, but obviously not a smaller meeting setup. Yeah. And I wanted to say from that point of view that, that one lasted 2 hours and it had great success because it had so many draws. But they made a point to call out every single participant as well and thank them for, participating and making time. So I think that in that sense, there's an opportunity to give credit and kind of recognition and prominence even more so than in live events. So that's just kind of what I wanted to weigh in on that question.
No, that's great. I think that's good because I'm curious, how many of y'all actually watched or play Fortnite? So if you are in the event industry, which I assume everyone is here on this call, Saturday night, they did a concert inside Fortnite and it got so much buzz in the agency world. And so of course I was curious, even though I'm not a Fortnite player, and I have to say Epic Games did a really good job of merging virtual augmented reality in one space. And so again, this appeals to their audience. You have to keep that in mind. You always need to design your meeting to your audience. So knowing that, and in this case, because every one of these people in Fortnite already had their own avatar, but basically they told them to come in, join, and then they brought out Travis Scott, and he had filmed in front of a green screen, and he was this giant Travis Scott version in their virtual world. Yeah. So again, knowing your audience and mind you, this was not their first time doing that concert. Apparently they had done it before.
Yeah, that's awesome. And Hallie, thank you for that. It reminds me, I started working with a nonprofit called Music in Place. They're based out of the San Francisco area. And, their whole focus is these musicians are gig workers, that they play at bars and they play at venues and they're all closed and they're all out of business. And you know, if we can incorporate them somehow into virtual events, I mean, it'd be great for them. It'd be great for us.
I
Ladies
said,
John,
oh,
one
sorry,
thing I'd like to suggest is nonprofit is a tax status, not a business model. And so there is nothing wrong with trying to gain some income over expense in going forward and being able to help other people achieve a little bit of benefit coming out of that.
Yeah. Completely agree. Thanks, John.
Yeah, thank you, John.
Yeah, and I was going to say is that one of the things that I do actually give kudos to COVID is that it sped up the adoption rate of this, because we've been pitching these for a while. Again, it was our corporate clients kind of pushing back like, oh, I don't need that extra expense. I don't need it. And then second is that, as Hallie mentioned, is that you can reach a much wider audience. So if for before you were only limited to who could afford to fly in and whatnot, you now all of a sudden can reach a much bigger audience to see your brand and also see your speakers and hopefully make an impression.
Extend the audience reach as well as the time available.
That's true.
So people that couldn't attend live because of timing will be able to attend if you extend it.
Yep.
Yeah, one of my clients, oh, sorry.
I was just going to say, Patrice had her hand up earlier. I didn't know whether she had a point to make or.
Well, I put my hand up on the question of whether a virtual event should be more or less. And we have had some experience. We've been live streaming for years. So while, you know, calling things virtual events is sort of the new language, we've been extending that audience with global companies for a few years, and we happen to have people on our staff with broadcast backgrounds, so broadcast engineers and so forth. So kind of well suited to do that. And the answer would be the same for virtual events as we would all give to clients thinking they're doing a live event, and that is it's scalable. And Hallie, you brought up something about entertainment, and that's a very good possibility. You know, you can bring in the comedian, you can bring in a band, you can bring in the auctioneer, you can bring in those same elements that you would have live and in person. So does a live event cost less or more? You're maybe saving on catering and the space. And staging to some extent, although certainly some aspect of that one venue with maybe an MC that's kind of throwing things to the band and the comedian and the auctioneer. So maybe there's some staging there, but the answer to that question to me is it really does depend. There isn't a yes or a no to that.
And Patrice, thank you for saying that. We are actually, as I imagine most venues are, working up, we're trying to pivot to keep ourselves relevant and still bookable. So we, in addition to our existing clients, we're working up tiered virtual packages. So basically the whole shebang, you're bringing in, you know, Mick Jagger and the whole band. You just need to have an auction and an MC and present some stuff, or, you know, Joe Blow that's playing at a Hole in the Wall, you know, based on how many folks we can have in the building. We are coming up with some packages to blast out to people just so they know that they do have options other than rescheduling. We are having a lot more luck with the corporate end of things than the nonprofit, simply due to the length of time that the average nonprofit needs to sell sponsorships and tables. But to Cindy's point, I would absolutely love to see the spreadsheet that you've been keeping on what legwork you have already done. That would be incredible.
I would love to know how many hours have been put into researching virtual providers by all of the planners around the world.
I mean, it's intense. I just shared it out. Thank you for reminding me. Yeah, and then I saw another question, which was, what's the best day of the week to have a time and have a virtual meeting? And just like how when you're planning a live one, it goes back to your audience. I will tell you, I was attending one last week and I was very surprised at what time they put it. They put it at 6:30 at night on a weekday. And the topic was working mom, how to balance it all. And I thought that was very ironic. And I was like, so you need to know your audience. And then I realized the one that was putting it on was not a mom. And I was like, I gave her some feedback. I go, I'm going to be honest. When I accepted this, I was thinking, oh, it's going to be during the day. And then I saw this at 6:30 at night, right in the middle of when I'm feeding normally my kids. this is not a good time. So you need to look at that. I will say there is video fatigue. It's a very real thing. So one of the things I'm worried about next week for our big client is that it's a 4-day event. They decided to go ahead and keep all 4 days. I don't know how realistic that is. And so I'm curious to see the numbers at the end to see how many people will stay on the entire time, or if they're going to just log off and log in when they want to, because there are exhibitors involved. There are some keynote speakers. There's, of course, breakout rooms. There's a whole shebang because they're really literally trying to do their entire meeting in virtual. And I just worry because people are very fatigued right now with the videos. So I think it's going to be very important to figure out how to condense it to get the same effect and give your sponsors the money, the value they want. And oftentimes it's because they just want that connection to the possible buyer. So making it larger doesn't necessarily, other than getting eyeballs on the brand, it doesn't necessarily answer the ROI question to the sponsor. So just keep that in mind too.
Yeah, and I think that brings up two very valid points. First of all, your meeting is still worth what the content is worth. So if you're bringing in Mick Jagger, people are, still going to want to see him.
Yep.
If you're offering something like continuing education, people still need that to maintain the professional licenses. Christina and she can talk. I mean, she's right here in my screen, so I don't know where she is in yours. We just pivoted an event it was like a 2 or 3 day event.
Yeah, it's like a 4-day event. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and now they're stretching it out over like 3 months.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they're taking their sessions, and of course they're scaling everything back to just the sessions, and they don't have the keynotes, but it's basically 2 days a week, 2 sessions a day, every other week from June to August. And it's interesting because, they launched registration for that yesterday, and they're already almost well over half of what their typical registration is, and it's growing, like it doubled from yesterday to today. So you've got a bunch of people who may not have been able to travel those days or couldn't go because and they can go to some collection of those sessions and the ones that they're most interested in because it's kind of scaled over time. So it's real interesting. I'm real interested to see how many registrations they end up getting.
Are they repeating any, Christina?
Yeah.
No, they're not repeating any of them.
So Can I ask, what was their decision instead of keeping it more condensed and saving it in like a cloud base and then having it password protected so that people can access it if they didn't go back on and if they did pay to register versus spreading it all out? Was it just because I do worry that if you spread out that far out that, again, people have the way, even just like think about when we rolled out apps at the beginning. People usually check into their app maybe 2 or 3 days before the conference, and then after the conference is over, the app pretty much goes dead. So I worry that if they stretch out a conference that long, virtual event that long, that they might lose interest and people forget to go back in.
Yeah, it was a real big question for them. And I don't know exactly all the factors that made them decide to stretch it out that long. They initially were going to do it over the same exact time frame.
Yeah.
And then they realized they were really quick to pivot. I mean, this was a May event and they made the decision in late March. So it was just a real, how do we get this to work? They refunded everything. Everything's going to be free. So it's all free content, which makes a huge difference too. And that, I think in retrospect, they probably could have charged something. I mean, not their full conference price, but they were just trying to move as quickly as they could on keeping this going. I think some of it had to do with just speakers and availability. Once they said, okay, we're not going to be able to get this done in May effectively. We need to stretch it out. They are utilizing mobile app. So they've got a really active, just traditionally this group is real active in the mobile app on site at the event. So they're going to utilize that, and they're going to keep that piece going. They're looking at, posting other content that you can get just by being a registered participant, having that stuff available afterwards, and just making, they want to bring this back live next year. It's like was their 34th annual conference, so they're just trying not to lose that momentum and make sure they get to 35 and have it live. But they're really going to leverage the mobile app, have tons of gamification. I'm excited to see it all come to fruition. It's one that I've been lucky enough to be on site with for past 5 or 6 years. So it's going to be interesting to see how they roll it out. I think, but like I said, some of those decisions I think had to do with a real quick pivot.
Yeah.
So that brings up a question that
Oh, go
I'm
ahead.
I'm going to say Kelly L, because I can't pronounce your last name. I'm sorry. She privately messaged me on the chat so nobody else can see it. It says, what is the recommended lead time to turn an event virtual?
I think it depends on your platform. If it's something as basic as Zoom, you don't need much lead time at all. But if it's something like On24, you need some lead time. You can't just turn it.
But what about just to prepare the participants?
Yeah. Well, I will say, because we've all been thrown into this, the participants are ready now. I would say your speakers may not be, and that's what you need to. And that's one of my biggest pet peeves right now is that I go, did we give all the speakers, like for example, next week's meeting, I go, did we really give them all the tools so that they could properly be live or pre-recorded and do a good job? Because, I'm grateful this client did have the money where we sent out a tripod stand, camera, like lighting, all the stuff to make it happen. But we didn't give them any actual like training. And that's the one thing that I think we could have done better. And so, so it's knowing that you need all that time. So I would still treat a virtual event needing some pre-planning time. Please don't. Oh, and I should mention, a webinar is not the same as a virtual event. I saw this on someone else's post, and it's so true because a lot of people are using the terminology interchangeably, and I don't think it's the same. Like right now we have this is a nice brunch. It's a nice Zoom call, video call, but it is not a virtual meeting. A virtual meeting is where you actually do have where you are, planned agenda, and when your keynote speaker is going to go up on the stage, if it's going to be saved in the cloud, that you're going to go into a breakout session, or if you're going to have sponsors recognized, etc. It's a very much planned production. Think of it, like I said, the best thing is to put on your TV show producer hat and ask yourself, how do I produce it to engage the audience and keep them entertained? I did want to answer, Layton, is it okay? I want to answer a few questions I saw in the chat real quick.
Yeah, please.
So they said, Janice asked, normally we pay speakers travel, et cetera, to come to the event. Do you see prices changing now to reflect virtual speaking? And I would say not for the speaker fee. You're only going to be saving on the travel, but I think you need to be paying the speaker the exact same that you were previously paying them, because they still have to prepare. They got to be on camera. And if they don't have a nice camera, you better negotiate that into the contract, because I will say that is annoying if they're trying to talk through their BlackBerry. Okay. So
yeah, that is something I did want to touch on, but we're running a little bit short on time. But if you could just real quick, like, what is the necessary equipment?
Oh, so definitely tripod, a lighting ring, Wi-Fi. If you are not connected to high speed, you better upgrade your internet now, because I have been on a few calls where it's so bad. A power supply so that everything can be plugged in, because what you don't want to have happening while you're on this call is the power die because your plug is somewhere too far away. Ideally, it would be a laptop that can handle all of these applications running at the same time. I prefer to have a separate monitor so that way you can see separately what's happening while you're also filming yourself. I know that's a luxury, but it is necessary if you want the application to come across as planned, in advance. You do need to be in a quiet room. If you don't have a suitable background, then figure out, do you bring up like a bed sheet, something, but you need to have it to where the background isn't so busy, because the main thing is that you want it to come across as professional. And I noticed some people here have like the virtual backgrounds, which works great, but if you move, you can tell. So just be very careful with that. We did ship out, FYI, to all the keynote speakers, we shipped out backdrops to them. So again, this client had money, obviously. So we shipped out backdrops, cameras, like we try to make sure that everything looked consistent. So that way, when they came up on the screen, it was like a production, And we even measured out. So if y'all saw our video yesterday, we gave our team instructions on how far the camera needed to be away from their face, so that we could kind of frame the shot better. So it's like thinking about all those little details and making sure that it really does come across, people are going to have some grace on, oh my gosh, you didn't use a real camera crew, but people are not going to have grace if the quality of sound is really bad, or if your content, like you said, sucks. So just know that those two things you need to compensate for.
I keep wondering too, is like, how long is that grace period? Like, how long are we like, oh yeah, look, that person's, I mean, you see them on TV getting interviewed by CNN or whatever, and you're like, oh my God. I mean,
I think
I'm
right now
I
we
saw
are
that
still in
pants
grace
video.
period, but I do think it's dwindling fast. I'm going to be honest. Like, let me put it this way. If you are going to charge over a couple $100s for an event, the grace is over. But if it's a free event, there's still grace. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and the thought I had last night is like, as we're transitioning back into this and we're getting smaller groups are going to be okay. That's going to be your production group. Your audience will still not be allowed to attend, but
I think it does depend on where you live. So good news for us, for those that live in Texas, I think our state's going to be open up sooner than whether you agree with it or not. So, and I know some people, they're ready. I mean, I saw my first Facebook ad advertise an event, guys, like a party for this Saturday night in Austin. I won't name the venue. I was shocked. I was like, is this really for this Saturday? I go, wait, it is. They are doing a physical event, not a virtual, 10 p.m. at their venue this Saturday to celebrate the state reopening. I couldn't believe it. I was like, okay. Because I think people are going to be judging us on how well we handle the safety of the event.
I wish I'd had a screenshot of everybody's faces when you do this.
I mean, I think it's going to be a lot about individuals' comfort zones. There's a lot of people lining up to attend that event that you're talking about, to celebrating the reopening. But a lot of us are going to sit in our houses and drink makeshift cocktails. I made this one out of a juice pack because I didn't have any orange juice, and social distancing prohibited me from going to the grocery store.
Yeah. I do think there are
going to be
sorry, John. Mm-hmm.
What we're seeing with a lot of groups is we're pushing stuff out to 2021, 2022, and you got to look at the demographics of your group. If you got a group that's under 30, maybe they'll be ready to romp and roll on the beach, but you got a group that's over 50, forget about it. And also you got to look at just the whole situation as to what the airlines are doing. Our lift capacity now is down to about 10% of what normally is. One other comment I would make, and Jeff knows this so well too, but with a lot of associations and societies, they'll give it away for nothing for one reason. It's given away for nothing to members, and they're trying to keep the membership up. Drop off of membership right now is incredible.
I think that's also two reasons, besides the lack of the association meeting, but I also think it's because the cash frozen. Like, a lot of people all of a sudden just saw in March, a steep drop in cash. So how are you supposed to rejoin if you have no cash? So it's going to be devastating. I think a lot of people are going to get hurt, unfortunately, in this, and that's why I do think, when it first started happening in March and April, I told our team and also our partners, I go, we're not going to judge you less if you told us that you're now going to sign up to be a favor driver just to keep income coming in, because we understand that all of a sudden events just went completely gone. And we even tried to do our little part when all of our South by events got canceled. We had over 800 and something hours allotted for contractors. And we tried to do our part to give them a little bit, but we couldn't give them all because like I said, they all canceled. And so we were just like, we felt bad. And so we were like, this is what we can do. And we apologize that we can't give you the full amount, but given the fact that the event's canceled, we're not being paid out from the client. So we're just trying to do our part to kind of keep you, it's like, think of it as like a cancellation fee too, like that you would have with us, even though it was not written in our contracts. But I was going to answer one more question in this chat room before I was like, sorry, Leighton. I was like, I want to make sure that I addressed it. Oh, how do you monetize virtual sponsorships? So I think this one is a good one because I've been asked this a lot, and I'm going to be very honest with you. Unless you have been doing these virtual meetings prior to COVID and you're really good at it, I think you need to be very transparent with your sponsor in what it's going to include, because I think you're going to have to give a little bit more before these sponsors are going to open up their wallets to the previous, which were $10,000, $25,000 sponsorships, because it's going to take a lot more work to get them the ROI, since people might see the eyeballs. And that's why I said I kind of like, if you know your audience well enough, like for example, if you're in part of an association, you actually know your members. I would personally do kind of the where you set them up on appointments and go, explain to your members and say, hey, I think you would be a good fit for XYZ sponsor. Would you be open to it? Because they are one of our sponsors keeping us alive. And I ask that you meet with them for 30 minutes over the phone. Just giving them something so that they feel like that you're trying to connect the dots, because I agree, having my logo just on the back of a backdrop or on the webinar screen is not enough right now. And so I think that is going to be a tough sell. I think, again, as we get better in producing these virtual events, it will become more normal. Just like how people right now, like Procter & Gamble sponsored that concert 2 weeks ago. There will be some big companies that are willing to, step up. But I think if you're looking after those smaller businesses, they're going to be holding their wallets close to their chest because they have to. They don't have enough money.
Yeah, I mean, everyone in the industry is not seeing revenue from venues who are usually big sponsors to, the individual planners.
And to Howard's point, I agree with you. The travel bans are hurting us. And that's actually how we got started in this, because it was the travel bans that actually caused our first ripple of cancellations. And that's why I think it's going to be important to figure out how can we make people feel safe again so that we can meet again. I don't think virtual events is going to completely take over live events. I really don't. We're human. We love connection. We love being in the same room. Even after SARS, after all those events that happened in China, people are coming out. They want to be together. It's just that they know at a moment in time like now, we have to all be kind of separated to make sure the virus can go away and die on its own, so that we can, and also not flood the healthcare system.
Cindy, you very correctly a couple times throughout this have mentioned that it's sort of like a broadcast program, which I totally agree with. So for sponsorships, kind of think unconventional too. There's no reason that a sponsor couldn't have like a 30-second spot within your program content, or the crawl that's on the bottom of the screen. I mean, a lot of that depends on your platforms that you're dealing with and the capabilities they have. But I think you can think out of the box like that.
I think that's great. Or even if maybe the keynote speaker wears the t-shirt saying the brand, just things like that, just to get it, to make sure they feel the love. Because I think more than ever right now, if you do have sponsors paying big dollars to help you get this event either free or whatnot, you need to give them a lot of love. So we actually had one event during South by, and this was hard because we had finally collected enough money to pay for the entire event. And I normally do not put Red Velvet Events in charge of sponsorships. In other words, mostly our team is always in charge of logistics, production, et cetera, creative. But there's this one event during South by we make the exception for. Well, when it got canceled, the decision was, the question that came up was, are you going to refund the sponsors money given the fact that you had to pay, XYZ? And I said, at the end of the day, I need these sponsors to come back next year when we have an event. So we are going to refund every single dollar. I know I've already spent time, money, and paying towards the venue, but we have to do what's right, because otherwise I'm going to burn that bridge and they'll never come back again. So we refunded every single sponsor, even though I know it was a tough thing, because we still lost money on that event.
Well, I am going to address one more question, which was how long should a virtual event last? And I think hands down, the answer is the allotted amount of time, which for us today was an hour. So I would like to thank Cindy Lowe and all of you. We plan to do this in 2 weeks. Expect a follow-up survey, and we're going to try to do some breakout rooms next time and get into some specific topics. If you would like to host a breakout room, let us know, because that'd be great. And I'm just going to throw it around to the panel one time for a quick takeaway from today's discussion. So Cindy, do you want to go first since you're our special
Sure.
guest?
I was going to actually just Slack out or chat out is that if anyone does have any follow-up questions, I'm going to give you my email address. I think this is going to be a moving topic, and know that we're all learning together. And that's where you don't have to feel so scared, because even the people that were hosting the virtual platforms, I don't think they were ready for this onslaught. Okay, including Zoom. I think it was very apparent that the reason why Zoom won, though, out of all the ones for the simple ones, the DIY, is because it's very easy. It gives you a very easy grid, and it was user friendly. But I'm telling you, I think a lot of us are going to be learning, and the key is, as soon as we accept that this is the new normal and that we adopt it, is how you're going to stay agile and how you're going to stay ahead of the curve.
Yeah, Cindy's right. You know, I've gotten a lot of feedback from friends and clients out there who are looking to, and I'm getting sort of tired of the word pivot, but looking forward to getting into virtual or straight, you know, or straight virtual or hybrid events, and talking to some of these platforms, and they're just going, oh, I'm sorry, we're not taking any new clients right now. Or they're pushing out so that we're not, or you're just not big enough, or you don't bring enough to the table. Good luck, and here's how to reach Zoom. So, you know, that's one of the things that we have to watch out for as we are going into this, you know, sort of new reality, as John Howe calls it.
Guys, really quickly, I know we're running short on time. I just wanted to say also, do not be afraid if you are already contracted with a venue or an AV vendor or something. Do not be afraid to lean on these people. If they want your business and they want you back, and quite frankly, if they're worth a dime at their job. I mean, we all are in this industry because we'd like to stay incredibly busy. Finding myself with so much extra time on my hands has made me nuts. I'm literally clamoring for any email to come in that I can answer. So if you have a relationship with a venue, or you've been working with Ilios or MEC or whoever for years, don't be afraid to lean on them with these technical questions. They should be happy to help you, especially if they want your business back.
Yeah, I was going to kind of wrap up on exactly the same note. I mean, talk to your vendors. Like, you know, we're all researching and trying to figure out what's going on in our various areas. I mean, there's lots of ways to take maybe take the already self-proclaimed registration nerd, but, you know, take your registration platform and create some sort of like virtual space. I mean, they're microsites. There's so much that we can do. And, you know, I know we get real focused on, okay, is it going to be Zoom or on24 or whatever, but sometimes that part it's a huge decision, but, you know, sometimes it's kind of second to creating this environment that people can go. So there's so many options, and we're just the one part of things like this is we start to get really creative, and it's a great opportunity to pivot and get really creative about different stuff. And us people who are really nerdy about that kind of stuff can't wait to be creative about solutions.
Thanks, Christina. Jill, any last words? You're the only one who hasn't spoke yet.
No, I agree wholeheartedly with what Christine was saying. It's like, we can't all learn to do everything. So let's work together. And I mean, just like we did for only live events, you've got partners you're working with. So learn from them. Let them help you. Let us help you.
Well, thank you. Thanks, Cindy. Thanks, everyone who joined. This is the only time, I think, on a 70-person hangout that I'm going to ask everyone to unmute. And let's give Cindy a big round of applause.
Oh, good idea.
It's so great to see everyone virtually, and we will be together again very soon.
Thank you.
Bye, thank you.
Bye. Thank you, guys.
Thank you for being here.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, and thank you for my caramel macchiato. Oh, that was
Y'all take
great.
care and
That was
have
lot
a
of
great weekend.
Really
Thank
appreciate
you.
it, Cindy, and everybody for coming.
Yeah, no, it was good to see everyone, those that were at least on video. And thank you. I'm impressed with your out of town folks too that joined on. That was great.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've got people from all over. It's been really fun.
Yeah.